One of the biggest features of the cell membrane, apart from phospholipids, is proteins. And proteins exist in the cell membrane, within the cell membrane, in a number of different forms, and they perform a number of different roles that are really important to the cell. So firstly, we've got two main types of proteins inside of the cell membrane. We have integral proteins, and these are found within the cell membrane. So they will penetrate either the whole way or part of the way, partially into the cell membrane. And then we can have, we've got some more at the bottom there, something called peripheral proteins. These are proteins which aren't necessarily embedded in the cell membrane, they're just loosely held on the outside of the cell membrane, as opposed to integral proteins which are embedded within or through the cell membrane in some differing amounts. We're going to look at the function more specifically of 4 different types of proteins which can be found within the cell membrane. So we have a cell membrane here. We've obviously got, let's say this is the external environment, and this is the internal environment. Okay, so the first type of protein we have is a transport protein. Now, the reason why we need a transport protein is to try and get things into and out of the cell if they are hydrophilic. So if they're hydrophilic and they're water loving, we've got things that will be happy on the inside of the cell where there's plenty of water. They'll be happy on the outside of the cell where there's plenty of water. But remember, we've got our hydrophobic tails joined together, and a hydrophilic water-loving substance is not going to be able to pass through a hydrophobic environment like the tails of our phospholipids. So what a transport protein will do is it will create a little channel from the inside to the outside, or vice versa, of the cell, and we can get different substances pass through the middle of this transport protein and then into or out of the cell. So they can move both ways, obviously, if we've got things coming in, like so. So it creates a pathway so that hydrophilic substances don't need to try and pass through and fail passing through the hydrophobic internal environment of the phospholipid bilayer, so the tails. What we can also have are something called receptor proteins. And what these will do is these will have a specific site where some sort of a messenger chemical, could be something like a hormone, will bind to. So let's say here we have a hormone, and the hormone will come and bind to this receptor at a particular point. What will then occur is this receptor will read the message from the hormone, receptor protein, will read the message from the hormone, and then it might be able to release some chemicals or substances which will make their way into the cell and start trying to stimulate a certain response, make something happen within the inside of the cell. So that's the role of a receptor protein. We've also got some proteins which are involved in cell recognition. So we can call these, got here a glycolipid. You can see it only spans part of the cell membrane. We would still refer to this as an integral protein though. So this glycolipid is a particular, let me say that again. This would be an example of a glycoprotein, not a glycolipid, because we've got the carbohydrate being bonded to, so we've got carbohydrate here being bonded to a protein, not a lipid. Sometimes you get glycolipids, but this would be a glycoprotein, carbohydrate bonded to a protein. And this can have a role in cell recognition. So another cell would come along and it might be able to join to and interact with this glycoprotein, and then it will recognize this marker as being a particular type of cell and can then interact with the cell in an appropriate manner. Our final type of protein we've got here is an enzyme. So what enzymes do is they will catalyze reactions, which basically means to speed them up. So an enzyme has a particular site, so we can see this square site. What we'll do is we'll allow on the outside or the inside of cells, we'll allow something called a substrate to come and bind to it, jump in that active site there. So we refer to that particular shape site as the active site. I'll write that in, active site. And it can try and make reactions occur more easily and more rapidly in its location there on the outside of the cell membrane. So not only is the cell membrane made up of phospholipid bilayer, but there's a number of different proteins which are embedded within or sometimes on the periphery or the outside of the cell membrane. And they've got a number of different really important functions and roles within the cell.